Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Mother Nature took aim at Rhode Island once again this week with a historic blizzard that brought the region to a standstill. Thankfully, this storm didn't do the same sort of long-term damage caused by Superstorm Sandy, Tropical Storm Irene, or the catastrophic floods of 2010. That drumbeat of disasters is cause for growing concern among the insurers who have to foot the bill, including the 2-century-old Providence Mutual Insurance Company in Warwick. Its CEO, Sandra Parrillo, is a prominent spokeswoman for her industry, testifying before Congress about the flood insurance program and what it's like to be a female CEO in a field dominated by men. This week on Executive Suite, the past, present, and future of risk management with Providence Mutual Insurance CEO Sandra Parrillo. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and Sandra, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
You know, I'll never get over seeing those shots of the floods of 2010. It's unbelievable still. I can imagine what it felt like as an insurer. But I actually want to start with the blizzard that we saw the pictures from the top of the show. What impact, if any, has the snowstorm had or will have on your company as an insurer?
Well, as the blizzard was coming to us, we all have memories of the blizzard of '78, those that have lived through it. And fortunately, the timing was good, actually. It happened primarily over a weekend. People were home, they were off the roads could be cleared. As far as the impact on the industry, certainly it could have been much worse. It seems to have even just a very modest impact. Snow loads, it's been a mild winter thus far, so we didn't have significant snow loads prior to the storm, so we're not seeing a lot of collapses, but there certainly are going to be claims and power outages that did occur, food spoilage, etc., but not one of the more notable ones.
So it's not just a roof going into a house, it's also if a restaurant's food went bad and they had an insurance policy on that.
Absolutely. There's a number of items that are covered, even people's homes. If they have a certain endorsement on their policy, they lose their food in their refrigerator, they can put a claim in for it. And then, of course, when businesses are closed down as a result of the storm, they can collect lost income through business interruption coverage under the commercial policies.
We were just talking to my meteorology colleague, TJ Del Santo was with me all weekend covering the snow. And we were talking about different types of weather. And when you think about what has a real impact on you as an insurer, is it hurricanes? Is it if we have major flooding? Are they, is it really just depend on the specifics of the storm?
A lot of it depends on, and I can speak about Providence Mutual and then firms that are in other areas of the country. And I'd have to say that weather-related events, particular to those areas, tend to have the most impact on insurance companies. As an insurer in the Northeast, our largest exposure and biggest risk that we have and risk that we have to manage is that of a hurricane. And we can look back in our history and see that the largest impacts we have had on our organization have been as a result of large tropical storms or large hurricanes. If you're out in the Midwest, it's tornadoes. It can be wildfires in California. If you're insuring earthquake in the New Madrid area, there can be an exposure. In Ohio, the derecho winds last year caused significant impact to insurers. In the Southeast, it's hurricanes. So it depends on what types of coverage you write and where you're located as to what is the biggest exposure.
Do you know, I'll pick your brain here, do you know what the biggest calamity ever faced by Providence has been in its history?
Yes. Last year.
Really? What was it?
Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane
Sandy. It was the
Sandy.
biggest
That was our largest event in our 213-year history.
Wow,
Absolutely.
So that's how bad that storm was. Because you cover, people might not realize, you're not just Rhode Island.
Correct.
You're through New England down into New York and New Jersey.
Yes, New York and New Jersey, particularly New Jersey, is a fairly sizable state for us. So we had a significant amount of claims come in, quite a few. But I'm very proud of my company. We have in place plans to handle these large catastrophes. Unfortunately, the last few years, as you've mentioned on the opening credits, we've had a lot of experience and we've had a lot of practice on how to respond to our customers and how to adjust our claims. And in particular, on Superstorm, Hurricane Sandy, as some will call it, we had more than 70% of our claims fully adjusted and closed and payments to our customers 70% after 30 days. by the end of the year, 95% of our claims were closed. So I'm quite proud of my organization, how we responded to our customers who were financially impacted.
And we're going to talk more about disasters and dealing with those later in the show, but I want to start giving people a little reminder of who your company is. Providence Mutual Insurance Company. Now, they might not have heard of your company if they don't get their insurance from you, but I bet if we can get the photo up, Nick, they might know your building. It's right here. We take a look. This is when you get off 95 South in Warwick by the CCRI campus. It's that stately brick office on the left side of the road. You may say, what's in there? It looks like a nice place. And you have been around for a long. The brick is sort of symbolic of your roots here. Chartered by the Assembly in October of 1800. Thomas Jefferson was running for president.
That's right.
Talk about the history of your company here.
We have a rich history, and it's terrific. If you're a little bit of a history buff, particularly in the state of Rhode Island, you can see the people that came together and formed Providence Mutual were prominent citizens in Providence, and their names, some of the names are Waterman and Brown and Slater, etc. These are people that are integral to the history of the state, that came together and pledged, as a mutual organization, they pledged their personal assets to protect each other. That's why it's called a mutual organization. And these folks come in, and incidentally, there was one woman there as well. Was there?
Yes, as far back as, okay, good.
As far back as 1800.
Your predecessor, in a way.
So we've had women in our organization for 213 years. But they
Maybe
came
that's why
together.
You've lasted.
I like to think so. But it's a great company, and as I said, one that's certainly rich with history and absolutely committed to the state of Rhode Island. And we are quiet, and we don't sell directly to the public, so perhaps that's why people don't see it. We sell through the independent agency channel.
So an agent in your I think my father had home insurance through an agent in our town. I grew up in Attleboro, and it was some big company was doing it, but we had a local agent, a man in town, a father of a friend of mine. I think you insured Slater Mill.
Yes, we
initially.
did.
The Slater Mill.
We insured Slater Mill. We insured the John Brown, Nicholas Brown House, the beautiful museum up on the east side now. We insured Samuel Hopkins' home, which was down on North Main Street, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
The First Baptist Church, I think, is
First
in there
Baptist.
too?
Well, the interesting thing on that is we insured the steeple, not the church.
Oh, really? They knew what mattered.
They knew, exactly.
So your customers, just to give people a sense, you pretty much sell all normal insurance that we think of: car insurance, homeowners insurance, business insurance, to all sorts of customers. How many right now?
We have approximately 67,000 policyholders spread throughout New England, New York, and New Jersey. And you're correct, we write home insurance, automobile insurance, and select states, and business insurance in all states. So we're a very well-rounded products that we can offer to our customers.
And we have just a little time before the break, but before we do that, a company founded 213 years ago. I was talking to Tim White before the show. He said it's not exactly a startup then.
No, it isn't.
Do you think about growth? Does growth matter to a company like yours?
It certainly does, because you're continuing to look at your expenses grow. You want to sell to more customers. You want to be able to serve them. We believe very strongly in what we do and why we can provide excellent customer service and good security. So we want to spread the wealth a little bit. So we are interested in growing.
Well, if you want to leave any here, I'll take it at the end. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the flood insurance federal program, which is a bit of a mess at the moment, and her organization's working to fix that. We'll talk more. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. My guest today is Sandra Parrillo. She's president and CEO of the Providence Mutual Fire Insurance Company, and she's been that since 2000, I believe, right?
That's correct.
But you started at the company, and you might not want me to tell this on television, but in 1977, and you never left, right? You've stayed all these years?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And you say you're passionate about insurance. What's kept you at this company, and why are you passionate about the work you do?
Well, I love insurance. I never thought I would, and quite frankly, I didn't know a whole lot about it when I started there when I was an intern during my senior year. But I soon
Senior at
Rhode Island College. And I'm a Rhode Islander, born, bred, and schooled, and educated, and lived here. I hit all the numbers. But I found it fascinating. And I found it fascinating because you can use the analytical skills. If you have this intellectual curiosity about how businesses run, it appeals to that. But the passion is because of what we do. Essentially, we are there to help people. We are there to support and protect our policyholders. And I think it's a very honorable job that we have, and I feel very strongly that we do it well. The industry does, and we're not an industry that's overly boastful. We don't go out and say, look at how well we did. I mean, people expect us to be there when they have problems, and we're there each and every time, despite all of the challenges, when be it the economic crisis or whatever it may be. The insurance companies have remained strong, and they have continued to go daily in and out, just paying their claims, doing what we do best.
And one of the things you've mentioned repeatedly, you've spoken publicly a lot, especially when you were leading your trade group, is it's important that you're a mutual insurance company. That's an idea that goes back, I think, to Ben Franklin. What's the difference as a mutual?
Well, a mutual company is just that. We have members, our policyholders are members. We don't have outside stock investors. And as a mutual company, the benefit that we see is that we are solely focused on the needs of our policyholders and responding to our policyholders, where we don't have a dual responsibility to policyholders as well as outside investors who are really just looking for a return. So that's why I think the mutual company is an ideal organization structure for an insurance company, because it directs our focus solely on the people that are purchasing our products. And it also allows us to take a long-term view of insurance, of our business and our operation. You know, we don't have the pressure of meeting certain quarterly reports. So consequently, we can look at a quarter, we can look at a particular year and say it was a positive year, it was a challenging year, and really take a measured approach, an appropriate approach, as opposed to reacting on a quarterly basis.
People may be familiar, Amica, I think, has the same structure in Rhode Island, and another example of that mutual structure. When you took leadership of your industries group 2 years ago, one of the things you said you wanted to focus on was the impact the insurance industry has on the national economy, which might not be the first thing people think of, and I think you brought some interesting statistics, so let's hear it.
I did. Because people think of insurance many times about, well, I get my insurance bill, I write out a check, and that's the extent of it. Not recognizing how many people we employ on a national basis as well as on a regional and local basis. For instance, employment in the United States in the insurance industry is over $2.2 million. We actually have payroll of somewhere in the area of $200 billion in payroll. And if you just do quick math, you can realize that people that work in the insurance industry are paid well. That's about an $85,000 average salary. Property and casualty premiums of $442 billion. We pay federal and foreign taxes of $8 billion. We pay $16.4 billion of premium taxes to the states, $500 million in charitable contributions. This is all done, this is all in 2011 statistics, and we have security that backs that of approximately $580 billion in total reserves or policyholder surplus to back all of the claims that and promises that we make. Furthermore, when we talk about insurance, there's so many different opportunities in working in the insurance industry. We employ attorneys and accountants and adjusters and actuaries, and that's just the A letter in the alphabet. We can kind of go through it. So there's great opportunity there. In addition, the insurance companies, we invest. The premiums that we collect, we invest in mutual bonds. We invest in U.S. Treasuries. We invest in the equity market. So we're a huge investor in both private and public entities. As far as Rhode Island, there's approximately 9,800 people employed in the insurance industry in Rhode Island. Payrolls are somewhere in the area of $800 million in payroll. And again, do the math, that's about an average salary of a little over $82,000. Premium taxes paid to the state last year was $67.5 million in premium tax the insurance companies paid to the state. As far as premiums, we have about $1.8 billion in property casualty premiums, again just in Rhode Island, and we made loss payments last year of $1.14 billion.
That's a lot of money
so
in Rhode Island.
That's just in Rhode Island. And Rhode Island's a very small insurance market. We're a small state and a small insurance market. So you can, as you listen to those statistics, to me, I think it's enlightening just the impact. It's not just that you need insurance to drive a car and to own a home and to operate a business and to protect your financial assets. We are a major factor in the economy.
We're coming up on a break, but I want to ask you before we get there, economy obviously went through a huge crisis in 2008, and the Providence wasn't immune. What was the impact on your company, and then what have you done in the years since to get back to where you want to be?
Well, the impact was in 2008. We do have investments both in the equity as well as the fixed income, and we did see a reduction in our surplus, our financial security, but fortunately it came back in 2009. As far as what we did anything differently, we didn't. When you're a company that we're very well capitalized, meaning that we have a sufficient and more than sufficient amount in capital and reserve to be able to pay and the claims that come in. But so it wasn't, we didn't have to do anything. We could weather a reduction. It was about a modest reduction, about a 9% reduction in our surplus. But as I said, it came back significantly. So it was uncomfortable, certainly, for about a year, but it didn't change our direction.
All right, we have to take another break, but when we come back, we'll talk about the flood insurance program and what it's like to be a woman at the top. We'll see you come back on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. I'm joined by Providence Mutual Insurance CEO Sandra Parrillo, and we were talking at the beginning of the show about Superstorm Sandy, which was the most catastrophic event you've had in the long history of the Providence. I'm wondering, the flood insurance program is now being debated more and more. The federally created program, since the private market just couldn't provide affordable products for flooding. Congress hasn't been able to really come to a final decision on how to fix that and get it going. You have some ideas. You do think the government has to keep a role in flood insurance, but you think there's a better way to do it.
Well, I'm not sure of a better way, but I do think that there is a role for government in the National Flood Insurance Program. Fortunately, there's been an issue of reauthorization of the National Flood Insurance Program. It's a program that has a lot wrong with it, and that needs to be fixed. One of the issues is the National Flood Insurance Program it only provides insurance to properties that qualify, meaning that there's adverse selection. The reason why the federal government needs to respond to it, not the private market, is that there are properties that are subject to it, and only people that think they're going to get floods will buy it. Consequently, it's a challenge.
The classic problem in insurance.
It absolutely is. But some of the issues just with the National Flood Insurance Program is that the rates are not actuarially sound, which basically means that it's underpriced. The government is subsidizing it. Taxpayers are subsidizing the National Flood Insurance Program, and that's all taxpayers, not just the ones that purchase it. The second issue is the take-up rate, meaning properties that are eligible and should be purchasing flood insurance, only about 25% of those do purchase. When you have a home and you go for a mortgage, if you're in a flood zone, you're required to purchase it. People do, and they let it lapse. And there's not a lot.
Oh, so you don't have to keep it, you just have to buy it.
Well, no, you do have to keep it, but there's not a lot of follow-through on it. And that's a tragedy, because as they let it lapse, things happen. And of course, people don't think of flood when you're down at the beach and you see beautiful homes. Well, it's river floods, and we saw that in 2010 in Rhode Island when we had the historic 500-year flood event. That properties along the Patuxent River were flooded, and some of those who had let their flood insurance lapse, and we saw those articles in the paper, it was a problem for them. They lost their possessions, they lost their homes.
How important is the flood insurance program to Rhode Island specifically?
It absolutely is. It's significant. But once the flooding program expired, and we went through that in 2010 and 2011, it was allowed to expire by Congress, and they didn't reauthorize it, meaning that basically housing transactions stopped. People were unable to purchase a home because they needed flood insurance. And others who had to review and renew their flood insurance, they weren't able to do it. It was an absolute travesty. And unfortunately, Congress let it go, and there was a period of time, about 60 days. They finally now have reauthorized it for a longer period of time, more than 2, 3, 6 months at a time. So we do have a 5-year reauthorization for the flood insurance program, but it's $20 billion in debt before Sandy. And of course, you saw about the federal aid to Sandy and additional money that was needed by the flood insurance just to be able to pay the claims from Hurricane Sandy. I think it was a request of somewhere in the area of $7 billion the flood insurance needed just to pay the claims from Sandy. Now it's in debt probably 25 to 30
So if it was an insurance
billion.
company, it would be bust.
Oh, yes.
Very much
It
so.
would be taken over by the regulators. There's no question about that.
And those regulators, you think it's good that we've kept regulation, to switch gears a little bit, at the state level on insurance? Why do you think that?
Absolutely. The states do a very fine job in regulating companies. The purpose of regulation, and incidentally, I might grouse every now and then about regulation, but I am a believer in it because it ensures that companies are solvent, that they have the financial wherewithal to fulfill the promises that they make in their contracts. It also protects consumers. If there's making sure that we all do things that appropriately, that we comply with the laws and the regulations of the state. So I do believe that the regulation is good. As far as doing it on a state level, the states understand. It's very different from regulating insurance here in Rhode Island versus Texas. And the Texas people do a fine job. To think that there's in office or down in Washington, D.C. that understands the concerns of consumers, can answer the consumer complaints when they happen, and they do on occasion, understands the companies. I don't think that's going to work.
I want to turn it to a more personal question. Your gender is one of the things that sets you apart. It's commented on that the insurance industry, rightly or wrongly, is seen as fairly male-dominated. But you're a woman CEO who not only is in charge of a company, has been for a while, but you ran your trade group. You were the face of the industry. Has that ever presented any special challenges, or has it been sort of a non-issue other than questions like this?
Well, it does come up for discussion. I think that there was. Initially, when I started, there was a challenge because you are looked at as a bit of an oddity, and really, how long will you be here, and are you planning on making this a career? I'd suggest that as a woman in this business, you have to work a little bit harder. You have to prove yourself, you have to establish credibility. It's incumbent on yourself to make sure that you are well informed, that you're engaged, you're educated about it. And if you can do that, then I think you can do well. It's very interesting when I look at our history, and yes, I was the first woman CEO and the first woman chairman of the National Association. But once I get in the door, then kind of gender question just goes out of it, and it's just Sandy.
It's just Sandy and doing the work. And we have only 30 seconds left, but you have sort of a pulse of the Rhode Island economy from seeing premium, volume, and everything else. What's your outlook at the moment for the recovery in the state? I
think I have very guardedly optimistic about it. We're seeing good positive indicators, certainly in consumer confidence. Overall, on a national basis, and here in Rhode Island, we're seeing some housing starts. Certainly, they're not to pre-recession levels. Some sales for light trucks and automobiles. Payrolls are up. So, I think we've seen the worst of it behind us. And we're very optimistic on Rhode Island. We're committed to the state. As I said, I'm a born and bred Rhode Islander. We love it. Providence Mutual loves it. And we're going to be here for the next 213 years.
All right. Well, maybe the show will still be on, too. It's all the time we have this week. I want to thank Sandra Parrillo for joining me. If you missed any of the show or you want to catch up on previous episodes, you can find those on WPRI.com. Just click the On Air tab. Stick with us next week and every week here on Executive Suite.